A subject I'm grossly fascinated with to the point of obsession is the Jack the Ripper, Whitechapel murders. I strangely started studying it from about, I might have been 10, but I think I was no older than 11. It was the last year of primary school, and I've done a lot of true crime books, Free on Lee Duffy, Free on Paul Sykes, various other ones. But I know my knowledge with Jack the Ripper and the Whitechapel murders, is greater, more than all them put together. That's how I kind of got an interest in true crime. So I started reading about Jack the Ripper when I started reading about the Yorkshire Ripper, then the Cray Twins, and got a bit obsessed with London and the East End. And obviously I was a huge boxing fan, which is the home of British boxing, the York Hall, Bethnal Green. Lots of fighters fight their way out of the concrete jungle, the Mile End, your Stepneys. So that's why you see so many great fighters coming out of the East End. And but you know what? A lot of people ask me, what's my thoughts on who was Jack the Ripper? Now, today there's over 200 suspects, and about 150 of them are absolutely farcical, ridiculous. I've read John Merrick was Jack the Ripper, Oscar Wilde, the royal family. It was a theory. It was the Masons. When in actual fact, the royal suspect, he had an alibi for 4 of the 5 murders. In fact, he wasn't even in the country. So, but that only come about from the 1970s. But in 1888, there was a handful. Obviously, the first suspect was John Pizer, aka Leather Apron. So the book Donald Swanson written, The Lighter Side of My Life, his biography, who was closer to the case than anyone, he gave a list of 3 suspects: Montague Druitt, Michael Ostrog, and Aaron Kosminski, who was a Polish Jew. Now we can safely say Ostrog was just a petty thief, and a lot of the research has gone in him. It was just, complete bullshit. Montague Druitt, the reason people suspect him was his family thought he was Jack the Ripper, and his body was found in the Thames on New Year's Eve, and it had been in the river for about a month. So it kind of ties in with the last murder, which was November the 8th. So obviously the murders have stopped. He's killed himself a couple of weeks later. His family have said, his last letter was, "I'm going insane like mother." But other than that, there's not really a great deal. My personal choice or kind of thought on it is, Richard Jones, who for me is the number 1 ripologist in the world, certainly since Martin Fido's gone, God rest him, and Donald Rumblow's retired, really. So Richard Jones, who I spent a little bit of time with last year, it was the same week as so I was talking to went to meet Martin O'Neill and Alex Reid, and spent a bit of time with Sean Atwood and Ali McCoy, John, all these kind of interesting people I was meeting and talking with, and I was more interested in being a bit starstruck with Richard Jones. And he said to me, the only thing we can be sure about regarding Jack the Ripper is we can't be sure of anything, because we never knew who he was. I probably think, I think he was probably a Polish Jew. I don't think it was Kosminski, although you can't rule him out because he was the number 1 suspect by a lot of them. Frederick Inspector Aberlin, like George Chapman, Albert Backett. He's I think he's one of the elite heavyweight suspects. Charles Lechmere, also known as, I think he's one of the heavyweight elite suspects that you've got to really... Thomas Cutbush. But you know what? I think the probability was... 2 secs. I think whoever he was he had the amazing ability to do what he did and slip away in the dead of night, almost like cat skills. I think whoever it was lived at the heart of the East End. You know, serial killers, the experts say, their first murder is the place where they live or the most comfortable with. So that would mean Darewood Street today, it's renamed Darewood Street 4 years after the murders. The neighbours campaigned and said, look, we don't want our street to be called Bucks Row anymore because everyone's coming to have a look and a ghoul about. And I would have been one of them. I would have been one mooching about. So so they changed its name. But I just think whoever he was, you know, London never knew such brutality before or since. And although we all know his name, or we know his nickname, and his crimes are forever in folklore, none of us, nobody will ever know truly who he was. But I just think he'll have been, you know, when you talk about Jack the Ripper, instantly what comes up in people's minds is a tall aristocrat, gentleman, flamboyant, walks with a cane, top hat, cape, smog, all the fog. You've got to have the fog when you're talking about Jack the Ripper. Carrying a Gladstone bag and shark eyes, white skin. But in actual fact, he would have looked nothing like that. A lot of people who did see Jack the Ripper said he described him as foreign appearance, international, kind of like a seaman, and a bit taller than the victim. So that probably would have made him about 5'5", moustache, dark coat, red handkerchief. But it's amazing, isn't it? Over the last 134 years now, we've none of us know who Jack the Ripper is, but people will get dressed up as Jack the Ripper because they've got this image of what he is. But I think overall, whoever he was, it would have been someone who blended in the community and just looked very much like, you know, because anyone like that who I've just described went up to these working girls in Spitalfields or Whitechapel, they would have screamed the East End down. You know, so whoever he was just someone who could just blend in. You know, like it was almost like wearing camouflage and just blend into the grass. He was just part of the East End, didn't look anything out of the ordinary. And yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing my book this summer about Whitechapel, probably in the summer. Spoke to Brick Lane Bookshop a couple of days back, so I'm going to be having a book signing in there. And I'm going to, basically it's this book, what I'm doing, I believe it's unique because I've read lots of Jack the Ripper books. And it's not only about Jack the Ripper, it's about the Cockney East End community, the traditions, the history, white jelly deals, pie and mash, you know, a lot of the history behind the Cockney rhyme and slang. And I spoke to a lot of experts, Whitechapel historians, Jack the Ripper experts, Jack the Ripper tour guides. So it's kind of looking at the Whitechapel murders 134 years on, kind of like looking back. And, you know, because it's all buried in folklore, isn't it? And I spoke to spoke to a lot of people actually for the research of this book. And I said, you know what? All this kind of East End villainy bullshit, Jack Commer, Jack Spot, the Craze, Jack the Ripper, the real East Enders, the Cockneys, the proper Cockneys, not the Essex ones or the Dagenham ones, the real East Enders, they don't subscribe to any of that kind of East End villainy bullshit that you see people getting the bus, the naughty bus outside the Blind Beggar, or you know, if you walk around Whitechapel 7 days a week, particularly from about 6 to about 8, you will see handfuls of groups up to maybe 40 walking around with some guy talking about Jack the Ripper. I mean, I went on last summer I went on one, and I was listening to this guy, and I was sat thinking, yeah, a lot of them are like, obviously the proper ones, like your Richard Jones and that, and your Mick Priestley's, and but there's a lot of people stealing a living, but of course they can say anything because everyone connected with Jack the Ripper's dead, and all these kind of tourists from abroad and all that don't really know any different. But yeah, listen, it's a business which makes a killing, pardon the pun, and forevermore it will be tied with Whitechapel, and it is fascinating. There's nothing that grips me as much as the Whitechapel murders, and to be honest, none of us will ever know, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. I think if we could find out who actually really it was, we probably wouldn't want to know, because it's the greatest whodunit in the world, certainly in the British criminal history, and as I said, I don't think there'll be anyone ever to solve the case, but it's fascinating, isn't it? But yeah, don't forget, so my book, There's Something About Whitechapel, there's a Facebook page, give it a follow, give me a message, have a chat, and it's going to be out in the summer. Thanks for your time, guys. Don't forget to click and subscribe.